I'm your host, Jasmine Burnett. Writer, entrepreneur, full-time grad student, devout Beyonce enthusiast, and proud Southwest Atlanta native. Each and every Wednesday, I'll be here to talk the latest in Atlanta politics and pop culture. And I'll be giving you an unfiltered look into the rapid changes happening in the city we all call home. So let's jump right in. Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport has been the crown jewel of Atlanta for decades now. It is the city's most valuable asset and the busiest airport in the world. However, due to multiple recent city corruption scandals, a Republican state lawmaker has introduced a bill to the Georgia Congress requesting that the airport be removed from the hands of Atlanta city government and placed under state control. We'll discuss later. But first, North Atlanta's newly elected Congresswoman, Lucy McBath, has endorsed billionaire Mike Bloomberg for president. Was this a smart move in the midst of her 2020 campaign for re-election? And in Atlanta pop culture news, the oldest son of superstar rapper Future was arrested last month in a major gang roundup, and according to court documents, he's facing up to 20 years in prison. Yikes. And later, joining us in the studio today is Atlanta City Councilman Antonio Brown. We'll be talking to him about his first year in office and the new housing legislation he just got City Council to approve. All of that and more is coming right up. Stay tuned. You're watching Apolitical. All right, let's hop into the breakdown. So we all came to know Congresswoman Lucy McBath back in 2012 when her son Jordan was senselessly and tragically shot and killed by an insane, racist white man for playing his music too loud in his own car. McBath would soon turn that horrific tragedy into action by becoming a dedicated gun reform activist and eventually go on to run for Congress, defeating Republican Karen Handel by 2,800 votes in the 2018 midterm election. McBath's victory was historic for multiple reasons. First, she's a black woman who won in a district that is 60% white and just 14% black. In addition, her district was historically Republican. In fact, she was the first Democrat to win there since 1976, over 40 years ago. Now, after a successful first term in office, McBath is running for re-election this year, but her campaign has gotten off to a controversial start. Last week, McBath endorsed former New York City mayor and billionaire Mike Bloomberg for president. Bloomberg has been gaining traction in the race for the Democratic ticket, specifically among the African American community. According to a recent Quinnipiac poll, Bloomberg is in second place with black voters, polling at 22%, just behind Joe Biden at 27%, and just ahead of Bernie Sanders, who's at 19%. This surge in the polls is in large part due to the recent support Bloomberg has received from several black politicians. In addition to McBath, 2 other black members of Congress have endorsed him, along with black mayors from D.C., Columbia, South Carolina, San Francisco, Little Rock, Arkansas, and Shreveport, Louisiana. Local DeKalb County CEO Michael Thurman has recently endorsed him as well. So why have these endorsements been so controversial? A couple of reasons. First, Mike Bloomberg has used his very deep pockets to get several Democrats elected to office, including Lucy McBath. During her 2018 midterm race, Bloomberg's nonprofit, Everytown for Gun Safety, pumped $4.5 million into her campaign. This money paid for several TV ads, which helped build up her name recognition and visibility in the district. His donations to McBath's campaign call into question whether her endorsement is genuine or simply payback for his financial generosity. McBath's likely Republican opponent, Karen Handel, the same woman who lost to McBath in 2018, made sure to call her out on Twitter, tweeting, "What Lucy neglects to mention is that she is bought and paid for by Michael Bloomberg and Democrat special interests. In 2018, Bloomberg spent millions to get her elected." The other reason McBath's endorsement is causing criticism is Bloomberg's problematic history with the black community, specifically in New York City. In the years he served as mayor, from 2012 to 2013, Bloomberg amplified a police tactic known as stop and frisk, in which police officers were purposefully placed in minority neighborhoods to randomly stop and search black and brown men for weapons and contraband. Prior to launching his presidential campaign, in November, Bloomberg made a speech at a black church apologizing for promoting this blatantly racist policy. Take a look.
I now see that we could and should have acted sooner and acted faster to cut the stops. I wish we had. I'm sorry that we didn't. But I can't change history. However, today, I want you to know that I realized back then I was wrong. And I'm sorry.
The only problem is, last week, just 2 days before McBath officially endorsed him, an audio clip of Bloomberg speaking about stop and frisk in private surfaced on Twitter. Take a listen.
She's going, if you want to spend the money, put a lot of cops in the street, put those cops where the crime is, which means in minority neighborhoods. So it's one of the unintended consequences is people say, oh my God, you are arresting kids for marijuana that are all minorities. Yes, that's true. Why? Because we put all the cops in the minority neighborhoods. Yes, that's true. Why do we do it? Because that's where all the crime is. And the way you get the guns out of the kids' hands is to throw them up against the wall and frisk them. And then they say, oh, I don't want that, I don't want to get caught, so they don't bring the gun. They still have a gun, but they leave it at home.
Of course, Bloomberg is scrambling to try to defend this. Unfortunately, he's not doing a great job. Here he is at a recent press conference being questioned about the issue.
Back to the 2015 comment. So you have apologized for using and promoting the policy of stop and frisk, but those comments on that audio, they're more than just talking about they're pretty derogatory comments about African Americans and the neighborhoods that they live in. So beyond the policy, do you apologize for those remarks?
Those words don't reflect the way that I've governed or the way that I run my company or the way that I live. I've led the most diverse city in the country, and the public there elected me 2 other times, so I think they're pretty happy with it.
But do you apologize for saying those words?
No, I had the miss.
Question is you.
Yeah. So, at the time of taping this episode, McBath has yet to speak out on this audio clip, but according to her initial press release, she is supporting Bloomberg because of his strong stance on gun safety. Here's what she said. I first met Mike when I was searching for ways to fight against the dangerous gun laws that ripped my son away from me. Mike gave grieving mothers like me a way to stand up and fight back. Nobody running for president has done more for the gun violence prevention movement than Mike. In other news, let's talk about Hartsfield-Jackson. We all know it, and we probably all spent more time there than we wanted. The world-famous airport is the city's most lucrative business, bringing in over $500 million last year, and it continues to expand every day. Seems like every time you go out there, they built some brand new structure. But who's winning all the contracts to build all of this out, and is the work being awarded in a fair way? Well, in 2017, we found out that a lot of it wasn't. This was when the city's former chief procurement officer, Adam Smith, was sentenced to 27 months in prison for receiving secret payments from a company called the Pratt Group in exchange for rewarding them with lucrative construction contracts at the airport. There's also been a lot of controversy surrounding how the city chooses the retailers who get to operate in the airport. With over 300,000 passengers coming in and out every day, these retail spaces are obviously highly coveted by Atlanta business owners, and the bids to win those contracts are very competitive. So how do business owners up their chances? Well, local journalists have accused the city of fostering a pay-to-play model. In 2017, the AJC reported that contenders for new airport retail spaces contributed over $280,000 to mayoral campaigns in the 2017 race. Because of this and a federal corruption investigation into City Hall, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms placed all of the new concession contracts on hold upon taking office in 2018 and decided to rebid them. Oh, and by the way, last year the Hartsfield-Jackson concessions director, Charles Ewing Sr., was fired for allegedly sexually harassing multiple women who worked at the airport. Excuse me as I pretend to be shocked. Last year, Republican State Senator Burt Jones sponsored legislation for the airport to be removed from city governance and taken over by the state. The bill passed in the Senate but was shot down in the House. Jones is reportedly still lobbying House members in hopes of getting the bill passed this year, although it has yet to be voted on. Mayor Bottoms made it clear last month at the state legislature that she doesn't think the bill is a good idea.
My position has not changed since last year. I don't think that we should tamper with the world's best airport. I think that any interruption in that airport in terms of leadership and oversight will be disruptive for the operations of the airport, but also for the people who use the airport.
This month, the City of Atlanta created a new Inspector General position to help crack down on city corruption. Although the position has yet to be filled, this person will be charged with ensuring that there are safeguards in place to help prevent further corruption in City Hall and the airport. Bottoms is hoping that this position averts any future city bribery scandals and holds off the looming possibility of an airport state takeover.
What we've had are some problems that don't have anything to do with how the airport is operated. And what we've done with the Inspector General will give us even more oversight over procurement and the processes that we've heard concerns about coming from our leaders at the state.
All right, moving on to pop culture. Future, America's favorite toxic rapper, is in the headlines per usual. But this time it's not for his actions, but for the actions of his son, Jacoby Wilburn. Now, Jacoby is 17 years old and he's Future's oldest child. Unfortunately, he was arrested last month in a major gang roundup and was charged with criminal gang activity, criminal trespassing, and gun possession. Despite the fact that he's a teenager, Georgia law states that 17-year-olds can be charged as adults. Because of this, Jacoby is facing anywhere between 5 and 20 years in prison if he is convicted of the charges. Future's reportedly paying top dollar to get Jacoby the best lawyers possible, but we don't know what's going to happen at this point. In the past, Future has been accused of not being the best father, specifically to Jacoby. According to the Jasmine brand, in 2016, Jacoby's mother, Jessica Smith, filed a lawsuit against Future for increased child support. In that lawsuit, she accused Future of lying about his income so he could pay less, and she accused him of failing to maintain a meaningful and loving relationship with their son, which caused him to suffer from emotional and behavioral issues. If this is true, the very least Future could do is spend his money to help his son avoid jail time. While it is unclear how Jacoby's case will proceed, we will keep you all updated as we know more. Alright, that's it for this week's breakdown. Let's take a quick break. Hey y'all, so I want to hear your thoughts on today's topics. How do you feel about Lucy McBath endorsing Bloomberg? Are you a fan of Bloomberg? And what do y'all think of the whole airport situation? DM me a video of you talking about one of the topics and I'll be featuring one of your videos in next week's episode. So head over to Atlanta Decoded on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter and send me a video. I'll be looking at all of your videos there, and again, I'll be featuring one of them on next week's episode. We're back, and I'm here with a very special guest. He made headlines last year when he won a special election for Atlanta City Council, despite being a political newcomer. Since then, he's wasted no time making his presence felt on the council, advocating for more affordable housing in low-income communities, and increasing opportunities for small business owners. Here to talk to us about some of the work he's done and his life as a newly elected city official is Atlanta City Councilman Antonio Brown. So thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
We're going to start off with a quick game. It's called One Gotta Go.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you 4 options and you have to pick the one that you would get rid of.
Okay.
So we're going to do food, Atlanta food staples,
Okay.
Waffle House, Popeyes, Chick-fil-A, or Zaxby's. One has to go.
They all gotta go.
Wait. Unexpected answer. Are you vegan? Are you
I'm
healthy?
vegetarian.
You're vegetarian.
So they
Wow.
all gotta go.
They all gotta go. I feel like Waffle House has non-meat options.
Nah.
No. Okay. You got rid of all of the fast food places. Hopefully you'll like one of these artists. Okay, so we're gonna do R&B artists from the 90s, early 2000s.
Okay.
Brandy, your shit. Brandy, Monica, Usher, or Aaliyah. One of them has to go.
Usher's gotta go.
Wow. Okay. Why? Why Usher?
I'm just a huge Monica Brandy fan, and Aaliyah is just like,
can't really.
Yeah. So Usher, and I love Usher. I do some work with his organization here in Atlanta, but he's gotta go.
Make the cut. Okay.
He's gotta go.
Cool. Well, thanks for playing.
Absolutely.
So I know you represent District 3. Can you tell us which neighborhoods that includes specifically, and a little bit about those neighborhoods?
Well, there's 16 communities in District 3.
Okay,
so
okay.
I'll tell you about some of them.
Yeah.
But so I represent the area from Atlantic Station all the way down to Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Wow.
And I mean, these are all really great communities. It's really interesting because the income disparity between Atlantic Station and some of the poorest communities I represent, the income gap is really unfortunate. Like, so Atlantic Station has a median income of probably closer to like $100,000, where you go down to the west side of Atlanta and the income is like $19,000.
Right.
So it's really unfortunate, but it really gives me an opportunity to really be able to just see just that wealth gap that's in Atlanta, and just how just unfortunate it is.
Yeah. Like you mentioned, you represent Atlantic Station all the way down to like English Avenue. Obviously, people from those communities might have different priorities, so how do you balance those two interests?
Yeah, I think there's some common ground even in the differences of those communities, and everybody wants safety. They want to be able to feel safe walking down the street, walking their kids to school. I do think that where Atlantic Station is more of a developed area,
Right.
their needs are, their needs are a little bit different. They care more about the infrastructure. They care more about ensuring the streets are safe. And you go into an area like English Avenue, they have no sidewalks.
Right.
The infrastructure is not there, but they really care about the resources and what are we doing to ensure that the development that's coming into the area is inclusive of the community.
Right.
So there's some differences, but also some common ground that they both can relate on.
Great. So you were elected last year in a runoff election, and it was considered a bit of a political upset because your opponent, Byron Amos, he was more of a political veteran. He'd been on the Atlanta Board of Education, had a few endorsements from city council members, and compared to him, you were relatively new to politics.
Absolutely.
So were you at all surprised by your success, and kind of what motivated you to enter that election?
Yeah. I've followed my spirit my whole life. I've been led by my spirit and my faith in God. And I believe that is what has carried me even to running for city council, because I really had no interest in city council.
Really?
Yeah, no, I was asked like 3 times to run for this seat, and I was like, no. And then finally I just, I felt like God was speaking through to me for that this was what I was supposed to do. But it was one of the toughest times I've ever been through. I was running against the establishment, and within that establishment, there were individuals that were doing everything in their power to keep me from winning this seat. And I was literally in court for a week.
Wow.
Where they were trying to overturn the election. And it was really intense.
Yeah.
But
wow.
I tell people this all the time, because they always make the statements like I did something impossible, and that they can't figure out how I won. And it's just, I always tell them, I saw God in the details of everything that was transpiring around me. Even when I was on trial and in court, I saw God in the details of what was happening. Because while I was in court, Byron Amos was actually campaigning the entire time. And I was in court for like 8 hours a day. But it's been an amazing journey. And I think that's just the beginning of what I believe I'm going to endure to get to where God wants me to go. But I just maintain my faith through the process of it all.
That's great.
Yeah.
What do you think it was about you and your campaign that kind of resonated with voters?
That I had experienced a lot of what they endure every day. Growing up in poverty, my parents being incarcerated for most of my childhood, and growing up on welfare, and being homeless. I think that residents knew that I connected with their struggles, and I understood what it meant to wake up every day and struggle to determine if you're going to pay your rent or put food on your table.
Well, since you've been elected, you've been a major proponent of expanding opportunities for affordable housing for low-income residents, which we know is a very important issue, particularly in the West Side communities that you represent. And the City Council recently approved legislation that you sponsored that would prohibit landlords from refusing to rent or sell to an applicant based on their source of income. Can you tell us a little bit about that policy and what you hope it will accomplish?
Yeah, well, Atlanta has an agency called the Atlanta Housing Authority, and that agency facilitates the distribution of Section 8 vouchers. And what was happening was you had residents who were being discriminated against when they attempted to utilize their vouchers in obtaining housing, and they were using their vouchers as a source of income to subsidize whatever the rents would be. And we had last year about 1,055 vouchers that went expired because residents were being discriminated and weren't allowed to use the vouchers. And it was just really disheartening to me because growing up poor and understanding what it's like to be in an environment where you feel like no one cares and that you don't have access to the resources that you need to be able to move your lives forward, it's really unfortunate. So I said, I was going to do something about it. And, I was, I received a lot of pushback, but I didn't allow it to stop me. And I wanted to show the city of Atlanta that city council really cares.
Yeah.
And not only do we care, but we are willing to do what it takes to address a problem and provide a solution.
Yeah. And do you think that landlords are going to follow the policy? Is there some kind of enforcement mechanism that we can expect to go along with it?
Yeah, so we incorporated a 6-month inaction period in the legislation so that we can provide technical support and assistance to landlords and provide them the education that they need, but also to work with the Atlanta Housing Authority to ensure that we streamline the process for accepting Section 8 vouchers, because right now the process over the last few years has been very cumbersome, and people believe it's so much bureaucratic red tape around it that they would rather not deal with it.
Gotcha.
And then there's these like artificial narratives about these stigmas placed on individuals, like if you have a Section 8 voucher, you're going to destroy someone's home, or and it's just so false. And when you look at statistics, less than 1% of individuals that have Section 8 vouchers actually damage a property and do all of that.
So the city council also just approved legislation that would create a new inspector general position to help safeguard against corruption at City Hall. Were you a proponent of this new position, and do you think that the role will be sufficient in kind of ending political bribery by city officials?
Yeah, so I was a huge proponent for the legislation. I thought it was extremely important for the city to be able to overcome a lot of the unfortunate circumstances that have occurred within this city in prior administrations. Councilmember Jennifer Ide and Councilmember Howard Shook kind of led the efforts, along with Councilmember Marcy Overstreet, on pushing through this Inspector General. I think it's a great opportunity to bring in a force that has the ability to really evaluate some of the waste and corruption that has happened, and to figure out measures of ensuring it does not continue to happen within our city. I believe we still deal with waste in the city. I think it's really unfortunate, but that's what happens. I mean, Atlanta is a billion-dollar organization, billions of dollars when you count our investments and our financial position. So of course you're going to have bad players when you're operating in a business that large. It's just what happens, but it doesn't mean that the city is bad. It doesn't mean that the city has corrupt people running it. It just means that we have to do a better job of ensuring that we're protecting the interests of the city.
Makes sense. So relatedly, in our opening segment, we talked a little bit about the Atlanta airport and some of the issues that it's faced with properly awarding construction and vendor contracts to local businesses. And there's been a bill that's floating around state Congress proposing that the airport be taken over by the state. How do you feel about that proposed legislation? Do you think that we need state oversight of the airport, or are you confident in the city's ability to solve the current challenges and continue to run the airport itself?
Yeah, I'm very confident in the city's ability to sustain the airport. I think the State House is also confident in the city's ability to sustain the airport. I believe that you're always going to have players in a political environment and landscape that is going to want to assume power or more power. And I think that this is more of a power grab than it is whether or not we're running a good airport. I mean, if you look at the airports, the Department of Aviation's financial position over the last 5 years, we've grown revenues substantially over the 5 years. And in addition to that, we run one hell of an airport. We have one of the world's largest and busiest airports. So, I mean, again, you're talking about major institutions within this city that when you look at, the success of these businesses, because at the end of the day, the city is a business.
Yeah.
The airport is a business. So when you look at the success of these businesses, and you compare it to some of the, mistakes that have been made, they're very minimal
Right.
in the grand scheme of just what we're dealing with from a financial basis.
That makes sense. So we know you're busy, but have you been keeping up with the presidential race? Is there anyone that's kind of popping out or sticking out for you that you might endorse before the primaries are over?
No.
No?
No, I'm not interested in
Okay.
I mean, I didn't grow up in politics.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah.
I'm really thankful I grew up Jehovah's Witness, and it's because I never got caught up in this whole Democrat-Republican thing. I just always see human beings.
What about on the kind of state and more local level? Because we have Senate elections coming up. Are there any candidates in that race who you feel like are really tapped into those issues?
Yeah, even like the Georgia U.S. Senate race right now, I'm not really excited about many folks, and I think the reason is because if you take a look at the candidates in a lot of these races, I call them recycled candidates.
They just
right?
keep popping up.
Yeah, I mean they're folks that have attempted to run and maybe did not win or are looking to. I don't see any fresh blood. Like I don't see any non-political candidates in the race that have no political experience and may have had experience working in the community or running a business or doing those other things. And I would like to see more business people in politics.
What do you think are some of the barriers for why kind of non-political people, as you would describe them, aren't interested in the arena?
Because of the shit you got to go through. Like I tell people, this is what I have been through. Even before I became a city councilman, and even after, now that I'm a city councilman, what I have endured from intimidation to threats to other things, it's just extremely unfortunate because it makes good people not want to run for office. Because why would you put yourself out there, when you're just going to be targeted and attacked for wanting to do the right thing because you're not a part of this establishment of politics that is entrenched within this city or state.
Well, turning a little bit back to kind of your work, are there any other priorities that you're excited about this year? I've read a little bit about your community loan program for small businesses. Can you tell us about that and kind of any other initiatives that we should keep our eye open for?
Sure. So before I ran for city council back in 2017, I was in a real precarious situation. I had almost died in 2016 from an issue I was having, with my digestive tract, and I was sick for most of 2017. But simultaneous to that, I was getting ready to launch into Bloomingdale's nationwide with my clothing brand, and then I found out that my business partner was in a coma. And was dying, and I was faced with how do I save my business, and in the process of doing that, I went for some support here at the city, and was turned away, and ended up having to apply for an SBA loan. But through this whole process, when I got elected onto council, one of the first things I did was meet with Invest Atlanta, and I told them, I said, listen, this is what I've endured, and no one should have to endure this. And if someone has a viable business with a purchase order for an entity like Bloomingdale's, where I was launching in a national tour across the United States, we should be able to support them. So I created the Community Loan Fund, which is targeted towards credit disadvantaged small businesses. They can borrow up to $30,000. There's a 3-month, they can borrow up to $50,000, and there's a 3-month deferment on the first payment. It's a 3% fixed interest rate, and they can use up to $30,000 to pay down their personal debt that they leverage to sustain their business. So it's really revolutionary. It's never been done before, and it's dynamic. So that is now, it's a private-public partnership, and we've raised over $600,000 for the fund. Yeah, so it's really awesome. So that has just launched, so folks can go to Invest Atlanta and find out more information on how they can apply. And then now I'm currently working on a few pieces of legislation.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm working on something within the restaurant industry.
Okay.
I can't really
You
talk
can't talk about it? Okay.
But the restaurant industry and a third-party delivery service.
Okay.
So like your Uber Eats and your Grubhubs. Just because as a vegetarian, I've had some terrible experiences trying to have food delivered to my house, and it's an industry that's not really regulated, so they can really do whatever they want. So we've partnered with the Georgia Restaurant Association, and we're working on some major legislation around that.
So you've been through a lot to get to where you're at right now. As a city council person, can you talk about some of the rewarding moments that you've had in this past year?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the legislation that we've passed has been really revolutionary for the city of Atlanta. The community loan fund was huge. The rent stabilization resolution at the State House was pretty unique. So we've been able to do some great things. We have a foot-beat patrol that was established for the first time off of MLK and Lowry, where police officers are building relationships with residents. So it's been a really awesome experience being on council so far.
Great. Well, we hope you stick around, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for joining us for the first episode of Apolitical. I hope you've learned a little something, and I hope that you'll join me again next Wednesday, because there's plenty more to discuss. See you next week.